welcome back to another episode of the Akashic Hour. I am Courtney.
And I am Rachele of Amethyst Ascension.
So glad to be here for another episode with you, Rachele. Today we are discussing extraterrestrials versus deities, and are they um, single beings or are they one and the same? We're going to explore this and maybe change some minds a little, get people thinking, hopefully.
Wow, I love it.
So we'll just, I guess, dive right into it because we got to keep it at an hour, guys. And if you do hear wind in the background, I apologize. We're still dealing with some winds from Ian, so we're just going to have to go with it. But I think I want to kind of start this topic with what I was talking to you about earlier, Rachele, because you know where I'm coming from with this, where Bible translations and is the Bible what religion says it is, or is it actually a history of beings on our planet and their hand in creation of humans? And one thing that interests me about this is I learned that the word Lord or God, for example, was a mistranslation from Hebrew to English, and it actually is the word Elohim, which means the powerful ones, or like you said, the shining ones, and it's more than one.
Yes, it's the plural.
So, what do you think about that? Because I know you have an interesting read there,
I
and
do.
could you please share that?
Yes. Okay, so first of all, one of the books that I am reading, it's by Paul Wallis, and he has a channel on YouTube called Paul Wallis, or he has another one called The Fifth Kind. And this particular book, I'm pretty sure he has more than one, but this particular book is called Escaping from Eden. And the story of Paul Wallis is he was a preacher for like 30 years. And he ended up leaving the church or maybe pushed out of the church. I'm not entirely sure on that. But because the more and more he researched, things just did not stack up for him. The stories did not seem right. Do you want me to read a little bit out of just in the beginning about what he's talking about? Like, for instance, in the Bible, the very first book of the Bible, which is Genesis, which is all about our creation story.
Oh,
Um,
yes, please, because I think it kind of ties into other things we're going to speculate about, and I think that'd be lovely. Thank you.
no problem. But I do want to say one thing before I do this. I do believe also that much of the scriptures that we have are not entirely translated the right way, and that at least in the scriptures, as far as in the Bible canon, that they
Mhm.
were taken from much older cuneiform tablets, which were the Anunnaki tablets. I believe that
Right.
those stories come from those.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. I also wanted to add before you start real quick, perhaps this is why so many people are now questioning it and finding so many contradictions. And if you view it this way with an open mind, it may actually make things fall into place or make more sense at least. At least it did for me. So I'm loving this information and thank you for reading that for us.
no problem. So, let me just read Genesis 1:1. It says, "In the beginning, God created, question mark." And this is what Paul Wallis responds to this. He says, "When I read this verse in English, there's no problem. With my interlinear Bible open, the Hebrew text on one side and the Greek of the Septuagint on the other, I can't escape a big question. Why is this word Elohim, which is translated as God, shaped like a plural noun? How come it's a plural if there's only one God? So that's just the first thing right out of the Bible. Genesis 1:1, right? Genesis
Right.
1:2, it says, let us make. So more or less it's saying, let us make man in our image. He doesn't expand on that, but I know this part of the Bible. And he says, wait a minute, who is this us? This is the dawn of time before any intelligent creature has been named. So who or what are the others that God is talking about? Who's he talking to? So then another part is Genesis 1:26. He also says, let us make human beings to look like us in the image and likeness of ourselves. Yet again, the footnotes in my New Jerusalem Bible say image is a concrete term implying a physical resemblance like that between Adam and his son. So these Elohim are plural, creative, and physical. What's that about? So they're physical beings. Genesis 2:10 through 14, and it says, a river watering the garden flowed from Eden. From there it was separated into 4 headwaters. The name of the first is the Pison or Pison. It winds through the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of this land is good. Aromatic resin and onyx are also there. The name of the second river is the Gihon. It winds through the entire land of Cush. The name of the third river is the Tigris. It runs along the east side of Ashur. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. And his response to this is, if somewhere in Eden the humans have been provided with a garden to meet all of their needs, why is the Bible telling me the geographical location of key mineral deposits? Havilah for gold, resin and onyx, and the gold is high grade. Who needs those? How is that relevant? And that's where we get back to like what they talked about in the lost scrolls of Enki, or the lost books of Enki, where they talk about the Anunnaki coming to the earth in order to mine it for gold, right? So why would gold be an issue for us, for humans? It wasn't.
Right. We didn't need that to survive, but perhaps they did.
Yeah, exactly. And another part, Genesis 2:17, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. And Paul Wallis says, how is the knowledge of good and evil a bad thing for humans to have? If God wanted humans to be capable of free choice and love, then surely this kind of moral awareness is absolutely essential. If the humans are incapable of distinguishing good from bad, then how can they choose the good or be held culpable if they choose the bad? Surely, if the man and woman have no moral awareness that God that has set them up to fail, they can only fail. And if they fail, how can he hold them responsible? That doesn't make sense. On top of that, how can death be a just punishment from a loving God? That was another thing that always never made sense to me.
Same.
I mean, your mom and dad, you figure, if we're looking at it from just my own limited human mind, okay? My mom and dad, if they love me and they're going to punish me, I mean, they might send me to my room, or they might not let me have dinner for a night, but they're not going to kill me.
Right. Or stick you in an oven or burn your hand, or,
Right, exactly. I mean, maybe a bad parent would do that, but is that the kind of God you want to worship?
I mean, yeah, we definitely, I'd hope, if you make it through that type of abuse, that you would definitely cut them off from your life. So why would we continue worshiping a God in that manner?
Exactly. So another part I want to bring up, because this has to do with women. In Genesis 2:21, it says, so the man gave names to all the livestock, the birds in the sky, and all the wild animals. But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh in order to create the woman, right? So Paul Wallis says, well, isn't this just a little short sighted? If the Almighty is the source of all wisdom, how can a female of the species be an afterthought? How can women be given as the man's helper after a line of pets has proven inadequate? Really? That's the perfect God?
Mic drop.
And then if you
So,
want to talk about the devil,
always.
so in Genesis 3:1, it says, now the snake. Okay, so who is this? Clearly, he's not a snake when he turns up. He is intelligent. He has arms and legs and can speak human. He's a significant player, but he arrives on the scene without any kind of introduction or explanation. So who is he? What is he? He is not the Almighty, and he is not human. Has any other kind of being been named so far? Did I miss something? Did I skip the verse that explains this other kind of being? I wouldn't be the first person to miss the glaringly obvious. Come to think about it, almost every time Jesus quotes the Hebrew scripture, he says, friends, look again. I think you may have missed something. The fact that I had missed something, yet I was soon to find it hidden in plain sight in the very first verses of the book of Genesis. So there you go. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, I think just what you did say says a lot. So how does this relate to deities, you guys might ask? Well, if we're wrong about Yahweh, and that's a deity,
Yes.
perhaps we can look at other pantheons or deities and explore this topic, like, are they extraterrestrial as well? And sorry, one moment.
So for me, the correlation here for me is that if we believe, and I truly believe, that the books of the Bible originally started from older Sumerian cuneiform tablets, then Yahweh or the Elohim are talking about the Anunnaki. And the Anunnaki first was like Anu and his two sons, Enlil and Enki. So was Yahweh, in fact, Enlil, and was the serpent that was in the garden that was trying to actually help teach the human beings about good and evil so that they had wisdom just like the gods, was that in fact Enki,
Right.
who were extraterrestrials who came from the planet Nibiru.
I think so, especially if you get further into that. You got the story of everyone knows what Noah's Ark is, but in Sumerian texts, you got Gilgamesh, and where Enki tells him to not take one of every creature, but if you look at it in a different perspective, to me, it seems like he was telling him to take the DNA of every creature.
Exactly.
And if that is just pretty much the oldest pantheon we know of that has like written language,
Yeah.
and they have these what they say deities, these stories, and perhaps it's the same in others. Why would there be spaceships in like old paintings, even in religious ones? How else would you explain some of their magical abilities or properties? Is it that it was just within their ability because they're more evolved, or are they, truly completely magical, or did they just know how to manipulate the quantum realm? Um,
Yeah.
also,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, and I'm just getting a bit of like disturbance in my phone. I don't know what's going on. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, so also the shape shifting, isn't that something we see common throughout
Yes,
many pantheons?
indeed it
And
is.
and why in the Bible did God actually refer to himself too as a dragon? And how many dragons and serpents are all like related to the devil? But yet, if you really read the text, they talk about multiple different ones. Not all of them are Satan. So I find that interesting too. And why would, let's take the Norse pantheon, for example, why would the Allfather have a temple in Asgard relaying like an honor to a higher hierarchy of people in the sky?
And what were they considered? Were they considered like the sky gods
Mhm.
or what?
Well, it was just in a different realm or like sphere on the tree of life, which I think could stand for different dimensions
Yes.
personally. Just like the Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. Like I think that's kind of a chakra type of deal or energies that they may use to travel. And how many pantheons talk about their gods coming from a sky or descending or Native Americans as well? And the sky was just something more to them, it appears to me. And I think they might have looked at them as gods because of how advanced they were, because of how evolved they appeared to be. And if they show up with these new technologies that we completely don't have or are aware of, how would you view them? I mean, I could see where we would be like, oh, it's a god, we must fall to our knees.
It makes me think of the movie Stargate, which I mean, I loved the premise of them putting that around like the Egyptian pyramid and stuff and the um like primitive peoples that lived at that time, and it was actually an alien that came there through a Stargate, which I do believe that we have them here, that that there was old writings about and who they worshiped and who also they worshiped because they feared.
Right. That's another thing too, like fear. I would probably, if I wasn't, aware of these beings and they just come down, like say Predator, for example, just come, I'd probably fear him. I'd be like, yo, are, are you a god? Just like demons and angels or some other beings we wanted to discuss. I kind of feel like they all fall into a different type of being. And with us not knowing much about them, I feel like we kind of created or interpreted it either symbolically or through like mythology, created these stories as them as like one way, where in reality, perhaps they're a different way. They're other beings from other areas. What do you think?
Well, I definitely believe that the the deities that we have, I mean, like in so many different cultures, these deities, even the early Anunnaki, are attributed to like a corresponding planet. And we find that in almost every single one of our pantheons in different cultures that supposedly, which I don't believe that that's the case, but history has told us that these cultures had nothing to do with each other, these ancient ones. But a
Right.
lot of their origin stories are very similar. If they're not giants, they're titans. And then if they're not Olympians, they're what? The Asir,
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our Egyptian pantheon, which is said to also ancient information coming from like the sinking of Atlantis, because Thoth was said to be Atlantean. Well, also Atlantis is, and stuff that I have read or heard, that Atlantis was formed by Poseidon, who was also Enki, and that it was his children. So does that mean that Thoth, who was able to escape from Atlantis and who went to Egypt and was teaching the Atlantean ways after the destruction of Atlantis, he was Anunnaki,
Right.
alien?
Just yes, because it's interesting that in South America they found ancient Mesopotamian tablets there as well, and the Mayans, or it could have been the Aztec or Inca, or maybe all of them.
Total.
But they talked about people coming over and telling them kind of the same things that ancient Sumeria wrote or believed as well. I mean, that's not coincidence. I do feel like they kind of went area to area and explained these things or made humans aware of relatively the same thing, but
Yeah.
maybe as humans we perceive things differently. So maybe some things got switched up, but it would appear that way. Especially like what you said, how so many have associations with planets or star systems or um, even demons, even demons and angels. All of these things have these associations, and all of these things kind of connect pantheon to pantheon.
And how funny is it that they also have sound associations? So, like the key of A
Mm,
or the key of D, and the planets do as well, which is
yes.
frequencies, right? So, is that what dimensions are? Is different frequencies?
Oh, yes, I believe that. I do. And I was thinking as well that because that's kind of what I believe our magic is anyway. Like if there's um a scientific way to explain that, I would say magic is like using frequency or the quantum realm, the unseen, but it's still all a frequency that you're tuning into, right?
Yes.
So could it also be that they used these frequencies in the beginning, the Elohim, to create this matrix we live in, or reality we live in, dimension, whatever you want to call it? Could they have kind of created that more so than like the earth and like everything in existence? But and what about these hybrid like minotaurs and
Mhm.
um these other things, that I don't think our ancestors pretty much were ignorant like they would have you believe. I think they very much drew, painted, wrote what they saw. I
Mhm.
don't think it was all just a cryptic symbol. Like they wanted to pass this information down and make sure it got relayed. So I doubt that they would be anything but as specific as they could be, just like the ancient cave paintings. Um, there were UFO or other beings painted on those walls. And
I can't remember what text it is. I'm not 100% sure, but I know, like in the Indian culture, that it's either the Bhagavad Gita or the Baha Barahata, the Mahabharata, sorry. Um, those old sagas or whatever, the old myths or stories, legends from ancient times, that they talk about a battle that was in the sky, and it was with different types of like flying things. They were called vimanas, and there was another one called something else. One looked like almost like flying pyramids or like bell kind of things, and the other ones looked like cigars, like this asteroid that we had that came into our vicinity, the Earth's orbit, what, just 2 years ago. What was it called? Mahi or whatever.
something like that. I know what you're talking about. you bring up an excellent point too, because that's something else that varies in pantheons is this battle. There's always that battle, the Asir versus Divinir. The what was the Greek one again, honey?
I can't remember what the name of it was called, but
Was
it
it the
was
Titan?
the Titans versus the Olympians. Yes. But
Right.
even before that, the Titans also were trying to break free from their father, who was Uranus. And Mother Earth was the Titans mother was Mother Earth, Gaia.
Right. And why do so many of these deities, like I'm going to use Norse, it's what I know the best, but I know in other pantheons they have similar things as well. They ride chariots.
Yes.
They so many instances of they're riding something or they come from above to us.
Yes. I mean, could dragons be some sort of, if you take a look at when we are putting something into space, okay, it looks like a long, like bullet type, rocket type thing with, when it's going up, it's got all these flames coming out of it. Could that also be misconstrued as something different that they didn't know? So that's what they called it, was a dragon, the shiny
Ah,
ones. And I've also heard stories from like insiders like Corey Good and stuff like that, that some of the, and I can't remember the other guy's name. He's a astrophysicist, but he talked about on working on secret projects for the government, or for a private party. I'm not sure, but he was taken to a site to look at one of these spacecrafts, and he said it was actually a biological creature. It was alive. The spaceship itself was alive.
wow.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think it's a coincidence. That ain't an accident, you know? Or the what was that native one? The bird, the
I know. I know
thunderbird or
which one
something.
you're talking about.
Yeah. And then I had went and watched that Predator movie, and they had mentioned it in there too when they saw the ship, and I'm like, what?
Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Thunderbird.
Yep. And like griffins, all kinds of stuff. Could it be explained in that way? I even think Jesus was a different being. I think he tried to spread the truth about all of this, and it could have even possibly have been what got him killed. I don't think him dying for our sins makes much sense.
No.
I do think it makes sense, though, that if, human religious organizations had an agenda, and back then it was kind of really up and coming, correct me if I'm wrong, like from the Romans and all that, they were like switching and all of
Yes,
that.
that's
And
correct.
thank you. And I mean, if you got this guy who has advanced knowledge and he's going place to place trying to tell people the truth, you know, um, could that be what happened to him? Because I definitely believe in Jesus. I believe he was like an ascended master, and I definitely think he might have been a hybrid.
He was definitely a hybrid. If you believe in the Bible stories, he was a hybrid because she was a
Mm,
virgin birth, right? God came down onto her and then she was pregnant, right? So that's not a
right.
human baby. It's half not human because God is not a human being. He comes from somewhere else. So right there's your hybrid story.
Right. They probably either abducted her or come down and kind of, implanted her, like so many stories out there
Yes.
that we hear of like abductee stories. And I mean, That's the only way that would make sense to me, because I used to kind of snicker or laugh when they're like the Virgin Mary. Like, what?
Exactly. Mhm. Is that DNA splicing? Is that
Mm-hmm.
DNA manipulation? Yeah.
I believe so. I believe it's how we were created. I do. And perhaps when they also told humans, I believe probably Inky is one big, uh, we'll say, star of that show. I believe if he had relayed to people like, hey, I made you more conscious, I manipulated your DNA and you're you, and because they would have had to have run tests and like taught them and, you know, done experimentation to make them more intelligent and such. So perhaps even they thought they were gods because they were like, oh, well, you created me. They say mother is God on all the lips and hearts of a child. So perhaps if these intelligent beings did manipulate our DNA, we would look at them as God, kind of like how uh, Frankenstein looked at Victor Frankenstein as his father, if you get where I'm going with that.
I do. Isn't that the difference of the first wife being Lilith or the first wife being Eve?
Mm.
A creation because Lilith is like, I'm not having this. I mean, this man is a Neanderthal and he doesn't deserve my, you know. And
Right,
I believe that Lilith was a Sumerian.
right. Yeah, she was even Inanna's handmaiden.
Right. Anunnaki, which
Right.
means alien.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the first hybridization that they tried doing. And she was like, mm-mm, this creature is below me. I'm not
Right.
having this. So then they had to create somebody that would be the first Adam's counterpart.
That
Right.
makes so much more sense to me.
Yeah. Uh-uh. Angels. I've had these conversations with people so many times over the years because I was raised in the church. I did Bible study. I went to church camp. I can still even tell you all the books of the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament. Right? It's disgusting, but anyway, just trying to show. I even studied with the witnesses for a couple of years. Religion has always been a huge part for me, but when I would have this conversation with people that were truly deep diving and into the Bible, and when you say, do you believe in aliens? They would always say, well, no, I don't believe in aliens. Well, how
Or
can
their
you not
demon.
believe in aliens when I mean, God is not human, right? The
Right.
angels are not human. If you believe in those and you believe and you take the word literally in the Bible, then you must believe in aliens.
Exactly. And I see a lot of people arguing like, well, they're not aliens. People are being deceived by Satan. They're actually just demons. And I'm like, but what are demons? Let's go back. All right, let's take your, argument here. But what are demons? Okay, they're historically old gods before, religion, that were demonized by religion. And who were them gods? Again, we're back at this
Or fallen
question.
angels, right? Or demons
Right.
or fallen angels. The angels were the messengers of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why why were they considered fallen? Because they went and had relationships with human women and created offspring called the Nephilim, which would be
Mm.
hybrid children that are of
Yeah.
an alien and human nature.
Especially seems that a lot of these gods or whatnot, even the Anunnaki, are depicted often as like giants. And just about every pantheon, you have giants. Um, Odin's father, Odin and them were considered from that bloodline. And then you have the Greeks as well. You have, I mean, these are all
And the
correlations with each
Anunnaki
other.
had the Ajiji,
Mm-hmm.
who they had a big battle with, who I believe the She are. That's just my own personal putting two and two together. I think that they were like half offspring of the Anunnaki aliens. And then
Yes.
when they arrived, it says that they arrived in like flying ships through a mist. Interesting, huh?
Oh yeah. I mean, because think about it, even I've heard people associate Fae beings, which I think the she would kind of be like an off-cut group of them somehow. Um, they would like relay some Fae to demons, some to like angels. Others say that the Fae are the factions that didn't choose a side. So again, that sounds alien to me. It's like if Inky and Enlil are up there battling, and they're just like, "Hey, man, we don't, we don't want a part of this, guys. We're just gonna go over here, do our own thing." I could see that.
It feels like even like the angels, when people think of angels, at least when I was thinking of angels in a biblical sense, I would always think of angels like all that they're the same, but in reality there's like different types of angels. That just means that it was a coalition of, in my opinion, this is all my opinion, they were a coalition or galactic federation of different alien types that came together in order to have an agenda, work an agenda, help.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So their offspring would all be different kinds of offspring. We have our werewolves, we have our vampires, we have mermaids, which I want to go to another thing that I seen off of the fifth kind that I showed you just a little bit ago, Courtney,
Oh yeah.
of a woman who had stated that she had been abducted in a, I don't know if I could even say this, like a human trafficking um, ring, but it's not the kind that you would think because they abducted her and took her to a city down below in the ocean. And it was mere people that she was being forced to make hybrid children. And he had called this, or she had said that they were the Mamiwata people.
Mm.
Yes.
Which is a deity in, I believe, ancient African lore.
Interesting, huh? That was just a
Right?
couple of days ago on the fifth kind. So I encourage everybody to please go and check out Paul Wallis's channel, The Fifth Kind. It's just amazing the amount of stuff that this preacher who had been studying for 30 years has uncovered with the help of other people as well.
Yeah, he's a very intelligent man, very well spoken, and I absolutely love the knowledge that he brings. Um, because I think it's important for people to seek this truth for themselves as well. And I definitely think it's the case. Of course, we've had our own experiences too, but um, I think there's just too much when you really look at it from that perspective. If we drop everything that we know and reapproach it in a new lens and kind of look through them, the stories, the pantheons, whichever one of you're choosing, just look through the stories and look at it through a lens of thinking extraterrestrial. And I think some people would be quite surprised what they'd find.
Can you relay the story that you know from ancient Native American legends of star people coming and abducting women and raping them and having children with them? And well, you know the story.
Ooh, the Raven Mockers. I think you're talking about, where they were these winged beings, and they would come down and rape the women of the tribes. So the wise women of the tribes got the idea to forge a woman out of clay from the earth, and they would make her pretty much so desirable that these beings could not resist her. One woman gave her beauty, another gave her a beautiful voice, another was a bead weaver and weaved her the prettiest dress, and the last woman gave her speed in her feet. And they told her to go down by the river and sing. And then when the fallen ones would come, because some of them kind of reminded me of angels, that's why I call them the fallen ones, and like with black wings. When they would come, they told her to run into a cave into the earth real deep. So she did what they said. They showed up, heard her singing, and they could not resist. So she turns and runs deep into the cave systems as far as she could go. And when they got her, as soon as their leader penetrated her, she molded back into a hard clay, trapping him inside of the earth. And that was how they were able to rid themselves of those spirits. Not to mention my own tribes, my peoples, they have a story, a creation story of a woman descending from the sky. And they believed America, because it was shaped like a turtle, was the turtle, and it rested on water. So she came out of the sky and she fell to the turtle's back, and she spun in circles around it, creating everything around her, the animals and the foods that we eat, and um, nature, that sorts of things. And again, I can't help but think alien.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And aren't there other legends about people actually, at the time of the last flood, a an ant-like being coming up out of the earth and helping the Native Americans move underneath of the earth because of what was coming their way. And
Yeah,
they had a couple of generations down below the earth or for however long, and then they resurfaced after the waters had receded.
absolutely. Just like they have legends down here, the natives in these areas, they have legends where when they would go to war and stuff, beings would come down that were allied with them and use cloaking. They had the ability to be invisible, and they would help fight on their behalf in these wars.
Interesting. That is
And
amazing to me.
yes, and then the deeper you get into looking at all of these things, and then you look at information they have on like certain extraterrestrial beings, the more some of them correlate as different beings. The shape shifting, and then you have some that look different, some that are more reptilian, that could be dragons or serpents. You have some that are more like very white beings with light hair, kind of like elven. You've got others that have dark skin, and then you have others that are like hybrid and just all kinds of wacky forms. So it's interesting to put the two together.
Oh, I agree. I've got this book in front of me here, and it is called the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. It says it's the ultimate guide to grays, reptilians, hybrids, and Nordics. And it's by Craig Campobasso. I'm sure I just butchered that. My apologies. But I found, I mean, so many, like even Cyclops beings, and there's like Cyclops in like mythology, and there's another one. I'm trying to see if I can find it again, but I read it to you earlier, Courtney, but it reminds me very much of like Akhenaten and what his bust looked like of him?
Yes.
Oh, here it is. They're called Solzars. And this picture, I will take a picture and put it in the Akashic Hour after this uploads, but or just put it in the the Facebook group so that people can see what I'm talking about. This Solzar being, and it says about him, the Solzars, like Syrians, are from Sirius B, a white dwarf star in the Canis Major constellation. They believe in the cosmic law of one. They believe in the all, which I believe Akhenaten was all about, like all, wasn't he? Wasn't he the one that was ran out because he had changed all the old
Mm-hmm.
pantheon and said that all of them were one? I'm almost
Yeah.
positive. It says that they are giants. And if you look at the depictions of many of your ancient mythologies or ancient, what do you call it, pantheons, the gods are all like larger. The Anunnaki look larger. The Egyptians look larger. So the characteristics of this particular Solzars is Solzars are giants standing 12 to 15 feet tall. Males have very thin waists with muscular torsos, arms, and legs. Women's waists are thin as well with voluptuous breasts and slender arms. They are hairless species and like to decorate their heads with jewelry and or starry glowy gel. They move elegantly, almost as if gliding on the air. The males are born with blue eyes and females with violet. They also have a hermaphrodite classification, and most interestingly, is one of their eyes will be blue and the other violet, a balance between masculine and feminine. Now, why would in the old pantheons or in the old pharaoh lines, why would they marry their brothers and sisters and have offsprings that way? Because they didn't want to muddy the bloodline, so to speak.
Right. It would make hybridization much more difficult.
Yes. It says that
Not
they
to
had,
mention.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to bring up the fact of like certain deities in Hindu or whatnot or Indian, like they have blue skin. Um, but
Yes. And you know what? Going back to what you were talking about with Odin and how he also had um, other temples to like higher beings.
mhm,
There were in here talking about like the Pleiadians and stuff, and depending on what dimension that they were in, just like us humans, their appearance would change. They would have blue skin or violet skin or green skin or white skin, and their features
mm,
would be different. So perhaps Odin was actually having a temple to like more advanced of his own race. You know what I mean?
right.
Higher dimensional.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. Definitely. This book is really super cool. I'll put both of these books afterwards. I'll tell you what they are, honey, so that you can maybe put them in the description of your video.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And we are at 49 minutes and 50 seconds. Well, like 50 minutes. So we have to start wrapping up here pretty soon.
Yes. Um, so yeah, maybe we could call this one a tad early today, if you don't mind. I apologize, guys. I'm just suddenly not feeling very well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we can definitely cut this a little bit short, although it's been 50 minutes already, which is really good.
Yeah.
Next week, do we want to tell them what we're going to be talking about next week?
Oh, yes. And they're not going to want to miss this. I mean, I'm so excited for it, and it will be on the Amethyst Ascension channel.
Yes, I'm so excited. And it's a bit controversial. So
Well,
people are not going to like us.
I think it's because, nobody likes feeling betrayed or deceived. So,
Oh,
but we're going to be talking about Western versus true sidereal astrology. And yeah, I mean, we've been on quite a journey with that. I think Rachele, a bit much longer than I have, because I kind of had that controversial moment energy where I'm just like, why? Why? Like, I hate life right now. Why? And it took me a while to kind of get out of that. But upon my research, it's become fascinating, very fascinating and very spiritual. So I can't wait to talk with you about that. And um, we might have a guest for that one, right?
indeed. I don't want to say for sure yet because we haven't
Right.
set the time whether or not this person can make it, but she does want to try at least. So as long as we can get the schedule right, yes, there will be three of us. I'm so excited. This has been a
Me
long time
too.
coming.
I cannot wait. I can't. Yes. So, well, I thank everybody for coming today and let us know what you think. I mean, there was so much I think we had to say about this. There's no way of just getting it all out.
No.
I think that's kind of why it felt a bit all over the place. Plus, I don't know, I'm getting like these very dizzy spells, but I apologize for that. But I enjoyed this as always, and thank you for doing this with me, and thank you guys for joining us. We love you and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you guys. Love you very much.